Our fourth video, well, to start with, well, I know we will potentially do some more, Philippe, as we flagged. There's other bodies of work we can do, but we wanted to get these initial segments down. And this is the fourth one to bring this full circle. We've looked at compelling case for creativity. We've looked at how to then bring creativity in. We've looked at the big $1 million question of which of those do we start looking at bringing to life commercially. And that leads to potentially, I think, the most important one, which is the execution. The execution of creativity to commercial viability, right? So what's the starting point? Where would you start with that when you work with businesses? Because this is definitely the world you live in. You're kind of doing that full end spectrum.
Definitely, yeah. So again, if I want to stay back a tiny bit, some people think that the idea is everything, and actually the execution is absolutely everything. So we can have plenty of ideas, but executing on our ideas and executing them properly, timely, and everything, that's where it's rough terrain. That's where it's that's the hardest bit. And doesn't mean that it's not possible. Of course it is, and hopefully it is. But starting execution, let's say you have one good idea. It's probably a good time now to bring that idea to different groups within your organizations and start unfolding that idea with different perspectives. Mm-hmm. So let's say you have this idea of a new product or services, and you go to the marketing, sales, engineering, and finance and share that idea with them and say, okay, guys, what do you think? Can you give your perspective on that? Can you build new ideas around that and everything? And you'll be amazed that, again, it's a bit of a creative process, but more focused on execution. Mm-hmm. You'll be amazed of the number of ideas on how to do that properly will emerge.
Yeah. So again, it's going to broader and it's asking deeper questions. For me, I planted the seed in the last video, but to me, it's realizing that some of the best people that know how to mechanically bring something to life and make it work are going to most likely be very different set of people than the ones that birthed the idea in the first place. If you simplify human behavior, the 4 layers: how we function, why we function, our intelligence or ability to function, and our life experience. And amidst those 4 layers is all of us. Let's start with the first layer of the how. There are some people that are just very detailed, efficient, structured research, data analysis. There are other people that are blue sky ideas all day long. And the latter will birth the idea. The former will make it work.
Yeah,
it's the mechanics of every business. And I think it's starting to get honest with ourselves of identifying who do we need more input from to be creative with the how, but who are the people that can make the how actually happen.
I 100% agree. And very often creative are not that good with execution. So they can be very good at the beginning of the execution because that's where the creative juice will keep flowing. And then when it comes to the hard work, weeks after week and months after month, they get drained. So it's good to know that they have to be backed up in some kind of team, but they also they need to be involved because there is this attachment, I would say, to the idea and the vision that they have. And sometimes because the execution, the team can get carried away, and the result will lead to something quite different from what the creative team had in mind in the first place.
Completely.
So it's very good that the creative knows where they sit. It's very good that the doers and the execution team knows where they are, but it's also very good if they still communicate and exchange ideas all along the way.
Yeah, completely. It prompts me, it provokes me to think even firsthand recently, because the biggest thing lately in my world's been writing and finishing the second book, which is coming out in June. But this is exactly that, because the creativity, I go the detail, I've got the structure, I've done 2 decades of research, all that's done. So there's depth with it. Yet it's a different headspace to do the creative writing. You just got to write, and then you build those stories, and it's storytelling. And then when you submit, you go through 4 writes, it gets to the editor. Well, copy editors, the copy editor I work with, Sandra, she's fantastic. Yet she works in a different frame of mind, and she sees stuff and she challenges the hell out of that storytelling to look for efficiencies.
Yeah.
And there's a thing as an author, I'm sure anybody else that does that, I'm sure you would as well. You've almost got to be willing to let go of your baby, as they say, right? I remember when I started writing years ago, somebody said, trust your editors, and dig your heels in with the things that are part of that essence, but don't get attached to specifics, because they are going to see what works best. And that's exactly this.
It's exactly this. And that leads to another point that I would like to make here is regarding what's the creative idea and the execution of the idea. And there are two things that are quite different. Mm-hmm. So what I mean here is that you can have a great idea and great concept, and then for some reason the execution will not be that fantastic. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes because of that, you won't have the expected results. And I've seen companies ditching the whole thing altogether. It's like throwing the baby with the baby water. Mm-hmm. And you ditch the whole thing. It's like, actually, no. The idea and the concept, the initial concept is still good. But the execution got carried away for some reasons in a direction that doesn't fit quite the market, what they need, or the price point, or whatever the case is. So you need to go back to the original idea and the concept and then execute it in a different thread again.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can relate this to our current climate as well. And I don't want to get bogged into conversations around that because we've already got all of that. We know that. But, a big adaptation there has been people are having to learn to work remotely and execute remotely. And it means going back to the drawing board, but it also poses another question, which I know we covered, which is sometimes you almost need to look at your business model and change your business model and the way you conduct business because of the execution, right? As you birth the idea, it's put into place, it sometimes means your business model might change. You would see this, I'm sure, firsthand lots of times with the products that you work on and projects you're working on.
And it may sound really strange, but sometimes when you have an innovative idea and you want that idea to fit your old business model, the idea will fail.
Yes.
And it can be really heartbreaking. I've seen that quite a number of times.
Yeah.
Because the business and our business model is this, and we're not, that's where we're good. And again, we come back to that myth of efficiency where, you have the creative and then the business grows and you have these systems and procedures in place. And the new idea doesn't fit that. And the business should be open to test at least what's a new idea with a new business model at the same time. And just, test the market and see how the market responds.
Absolutely. And it might be a new stream. It might be revise the existing business model, test it. It might be revise the existing. It might be a new vertical, a new stream. But the point is not to be attached to the one way.
Yeah, you need to have that openness and open-mindedness to try new things and try new business models too. But that's I think the two are really combined. It's not one or the other. It's both. And you need to understand as a business, you need to really question both.
Yeah. I would sort from a people and behavior side and a business side of this, and execution is invariably when we do birth these ideas, we've identified them, we map it out, we now change it, we're instilling in a business. We might be training our staff new products and they got to get their heads wrapped around it. We may be changing systems, structures, business models. And so a lot of the time you can't then separate change and the path of change from execution. And so I would talk to this from, you've got to be ready to drive change and drive change at an individual level. I always say people talk about businesses changing. Businesses don't change. You buy a business name off ASIC shelf for a few $100s with GST. A business is people change. And you've got to be ready to drive a change path. I don't want to get stuck into a whole piece here around change, and that's a whole different series we can do in itself. But I would flag some fundamentals of be ready to drive change with persistence, with a variety of consistent communications, with different messaging and packaging, and working with individuals through that. So it could be resistance and persistence as well. What's your thoughts on that, Philippe?
Well, that's a point I really wanted to make too regarding execution, is that I've seen a lot of business trying ideas for a short period of time, and if they don't work, they just discard them and then move to the next one and everything. And I understand, you need to throw ideas and then see which one sticks, but sometimes you are throwing away very good ideas that could be profitable in the long term. So there's definitely a case when you believe that there's a need in the market, you have identified that need, there's a market fit, there's a volume, and there's a business case. There's a case of being persistent and resilient in that. And we have brands out there that wouldn't be living if their founders and visionary was not persistent. And you take Apple,
completely.
For example, Dyson, Tesla, and Edison. We have light bulbs here, and there wouldn't be any light bulb in this world if that guy wasn't really, really persistent. So, and Dyson creating a whole industry and a whole manufacturing capabilities in the UK just based on persistence. So there's a case for that too. So I think there should be different type of teams in the organizations, and there should be a team that should be in charge of long-term innovations.
Mm-hmm. Like that, like so dedicated to this constant evolution, longer term innovation. I like that. That persistent thing, adding to what you said there, makes me think those are business prime examples. You know, the Teslas, the Steve Jobs, the Apples. I would even dumb that down and say it's true for everything. The books that you like to read, your movies that you like to watch, all of those directors and authors had to go through a journey. And when they're doing it for the first time, it's not an easy one to tread, you know, to find funding, build. The clothes you wear, the brands you wear, the cars you like, the holidays ideas, the itineraries that are packaged, all of them have one thing in common, which is every single one of them began as a thought of an idea in somebody's mind.
Yeah. There's a last point maybe I would like to mention here on execution. Very often I found there's a kind of a curve in execution which goes like this. At the beginning, it starts to go well and everyone is excited. And then you hit the hard things, and you hit the tip of the curve, and then you go on the other way. Very often people enjoy the first hit, which is of everything.
Yes.
And that's where, okay, wow, these ideas, they really
have fantastic. All the fun, right? The excitement.
And everything goes well and the team works very well together. And then dive into details and I realize, oh, wow, actually, it's much harder than I thought it would be. And and the deep is like, wow, the idea is great, but we don't have any business model for that. And we don't know what to do. And sometimes people just leave that as it is and drop the whole thing. But again, I've been in that industry for long enough, and the dip is completely normal. It's part of the process, and you need to push through that dip. And if the team has trust and knows that there's light at the end of the tunnel, it's just a matter of keep pushing, and then you're going to find an outcome.
I know we're ad-libbing it. We're not scripted on this, Phil, and it makes me think. What's one project that springs to mind for you personally, like to really personalize that? What's a project or something you've been working on that you can see yourself going through that, even where you're challenged? Yeah. You know you're hitting the dip. That's the thing, is you consciously know, so you know you're going to dig in and get the persistence, resilience, and push through it. I'll talk to this in a minute, but what's one that stands out for you? What's a tough time where you...
One I can speak very freely about because it's a personal product. It's a product I designed a few years ago. It's called Cable Stop. It's cable management for your desk. So it secures your cables on your desk. You think as paperweight for your cables.
Yeah.
And a couple of dips that we hit in the 8 months of development. The first one is that there were 6 parts for probably the first 5 months. And 6 parts for a very simple device, it's too complicated, it's too much thought, different suppliers and everything. So for a very simple product, kind of turned into a bit of a nightmare. And that's been resolved through making prototype and testing and doing several trials, and we reduced that to 3 parts. Mm-hmm. The second bit is there's a point where we didn't have a business model. So I'm going to show you, that's one of the prototypes. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing, same architecture and techniques. And this one, there were no business case for this one. That product was too costly to manufacture. Mm-hmm. The retail price was way, way, way too high, which means that you hit the top of the pyramid from the consumers, and that's high cost of acquisition, profit margin a bit small, volume a bit small, so you realize that you really don't have a business for that. Mm-hmm. And I had to work from that and redesign that a number of times. We did 32 prototypes and business models to arrive to that product. And I know that with this one that the product works and the business model works.
It so kind of matches the color of my t-shirt. Just hold that up again, please, Philippe. Like, completely. I was doing that. We blend. I like that. Very good. I need one to match on my desk for the clothes I'm wearing. That's also 32 prototypes.
Yeah, exactly. And business models.
And business models to go with it.
And wow. The latest one is like you just tweak a couple of things. It's one millimeter here, one there, but then it changes the price of the part, so you need to loop again with the business model and make sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know for mine, the personal example that springs to me, and it's a constant one right now, is, it's actually probably fortunate time. I made a decision 2 years ago. I needed to start being more in the digital world, and what did that look like? And I didn't particularly want to go down the path of putting all my content on everybody else's platforms and forums. I like this idea of ownership, right? There's a case for that as well.
Definitely.
But I can tell you what, the path of custom building your own digital platform, like an academy, has challenged the absolute hell out of me. And it's everything, right? And you would get this. It's the design of that. It's the look, the feel, the design, the functionality, what I think versus then the dev team, the translation of that constantly. Sometimes it's smooth. Sometimes, because you're back to these, how I see it creatively and how they see it working efficiently, it's just like fire and complete clash. And it has been an absolute one of those where there's times I just have had to really dig deep, pull my hair out, as you can probably tell. And yeah, that's my one. That's the real example for me, just on a very practical level of adapting my business model, realizing I need to, and how do I do this in a way that makes it work? And it's a constant evolution. It's all the things we were talking to before, because it's not like that's done. And it's same for you. You get to products, you can potentially protect that. I think this is something we hadn't planned on talking about, but I think we will, Philippe, because I know you talked to this really beautifully. Because even once you've executed, once you've got the product out, once you've got the business model and the thing out there, how do you then protect that to some degree from competitive attack, right?
Yeah, well, we can do a whole video on this one.
Well, do you want? Well, we hadn't planned on, but let's do a fifth one on exactly that. Let's do another final one in a second then, and we'll just do that as an ad lib, which is once you're there, you've executed, got it out. And so we'll move to that one next. Cool. So instead of going there now, what's one thing then on that execution? Let's timely to maybe close. One thing to focus, execution of creativity then. What's your final word on that?
I think persistence.
Yeah.
You know, there's light at the end of the tunnel. If the trust is there, you know, and people grind and keep pushing, you will find a solution. But,
yeah.
You know.
Mine would be absolutely that. The only thing I would say is the one thing for me is know that the people that to execute aren't necessarily you. Right? As a business, I may well have the idea and be great in the creative, but trust the people, but then be willing to let go and allow the right people, or the best people is maybe a better word, to be involved in doing the execution. Let go of your babies. Cool. Let's do a fifth one because it prompted that. We'll come back and do one final one we hadn't planned on. Good to talk. We'll talk again in a minute. Thanks, Philippe.
Thank you, Mark.